episode 171, Foot Strength and Shoe Sales. I'm your host, Dr. Justin Trosclair, and today we hear Dr. Colin Dombroski's perspective. Join 2017 and 18 Podcast Awards nominated host and best-selling author on Amazon as we get a behind-the-curtain look at all types of doctor and guest specialties. Let's hear a doctor's perspective. 2021, welcome. I'm glad you're tuning in today. This is a good episode. It's our first time having a Canadian Certified Pedorthist. And he also is actually a doctor, PhD style. So he does a lot of research into feet and plantar fasciitis and those types of things. And we'll discuss, more about what his credentials are. He also owns a 92-year-old shoe store. So we get to have some fun with, a long-standing business, retail during COVID, as well as being the person that creates inserts for people. And so it's a good conversation. Before we jump in, the role was reversed, and I was a guest on Dr. Kevin Christie's Modern Chiropractic Marketing. You can go to adoctorsperspective.net/modernchiro to get to that link. And we talk about one sheets and CV creation. So he really was excited about what I did for him and wanted, just a return to favor. So really excited for that. Hope you enjoy it. There is a discount if you listen to his show. So it's a secret URL. As always, if you're getting value from the show, you can visit adoctorsperspective.net/support. And there's everything from $1 to monthly contributions. It's a PayPal link versus Patreon. So we really appreciate it over here in Germany for your support. Well, Dr. Colin has written a few books. We'll discuss that as well. And that's it. Let's just go ahead and jump in. adoctorsperspective.net/171 for all the show notes and the transcript, typically within 24 hours of release. Let's go. Hashtag behind the curtain. Live from Germany and Ontario, today on the show, we're going to talk feet. And we're going to talk different ways than I think we have in the past, even from the podiatry series that we had. But he is going to be the author of nearly 5 books, if you can believe that. He's had so much time, I guess, during Corona. He's going to put out 4 books this year. And then at the same time, he is just passionate about plantar fasciitis and making sure that we just stop having foot pain. So please welcome to the show, Dr. Colin Dombroski.
Well, thank you so much for having me on today.
You betcha. Well, I love your get up already. You got a nice background and a nice logo on the wall. So I'm pretty excited to see that just because I like branding and it's just pretty cool. It's neither here nor there, I suppose. Nice. But
are you kidding? We're all business owners. I love the business part of my practice just as much as I love seeing patients.
Yeah, it's pretty fun, I think. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we'll get some business advice and some of the questions later on. But
wonderful. Let's
jump in. You don't have to go back too far as when you were in high school and college, but you've been a podiatrist for a while. And so where are you going, or how did you turn into writing books and finding this passion and this calling that you have?
No problem. So first of all, and just to say, I'm a Canadian Certified Pedorthist. So there's a little bit of a difference there when it comes to scope of practice. So really, I focus strictly on the design, manufacture of foot orthotics and the rehabilitation that comes around that. So I don't do our scope of practice between us and a podiatrist are night and day different. Podiatry is like a real medical degree. And I have a PhD, but I don't have an MD. And so we really focus in on the mechanical side of orthotics, footwear, and rehab.
Wow, I completely missed that in the bio.
No problem at all.
Wow. So it was again a
Canadian Certified Pedorthist.
All right. So this will be fun. Yeah. This is completely different. Okay. So this explains why whenever I was looking at some of the questions to ask you with orthotics, why it kept coming up over and over again. Give us a little background more on what that is, and then we'll jump into some more questions.
Yeah, no problem. So, certified pedorthists are those people who are trained in the design and the manufacture of custom foot orthotics. So typically we'll go to school for an undergraduate degree in human kinetics or kinesiology. In my case, it was health sciences. And then we go beyond from that into a postgraduate degree program that certifies us to become pedorthists. So we do another 1-year program with both online learning and in-clinic learning that we are our national board certifications, and then off we go. And so we focus really in that area. So specifically in the design and the manufacture of orthotics, bracing, compression stockings, and how that works to help somebody with pain from their feet to their lower back. Now, in different areas, different people some people will prescribe and provide. So from a podiatrist standpoint, they might actually be the ones both prescribing and providing a device. We don't prescribe orthotics. So we'll take prescriptions from family doctors and surgeons and podiatrists and the like, and then we fill those prescriptions. And then we physically make the orthotics ourselves and take patients down that journey.
Whoa. So you're the guy behind the scenes creating these orthotics, like.
Yeah. And then I'm also the guy that produces research on this specifically. So, I'm one of few pedorthists in Canada that have a PhD that actually practice. I'm an adjunct research professor at Western University, where we do research using everything from biplanar fluoroscopy and CT imaging to we have an 8-camera Vicon motion capture facility in my facility. And then we also use things like 3D printing and whatnot to be able to ascertain what these devices are actually doing when we get them in someone's shoe, and that was really the impetus for me to go on and do more graduate work, was to really answer some of these questions as to why do orthotics work the way that they do? Do orthotics work the way that they do? And we've been able to publish some really interesting stuff, more specifically and recently on casting. So whether you use a foam box or a plaster cast, and how that might actually change motion of a foot in a shoe in real time using something like biplanar fluoroscopy.
So what do we want? Is that a good option then, using that style?
Well, what we were actually found was that if you had a really low arch, that using a foam box cast was a little bit more effective at controlling the motion of the medial longitudinal arch compared to a plaster cast of someone's foot. And really, it was no different if you had a regular or a high arched foot. So, it really comes down to the practitioner's choice when it comes down to things like time and, cost, and whether it's appropriate for the patient to do either foam box or plaster casting. But we do know that if we want to get some better control in that one pes planus condition, that foam box seemed to be the better choice.
And when you're saying that, it's like when you put the weight on the foot into the mold is better. It's actually a better mold of your foot. So when you build it, it's more custom to them versus the plaster, where maybe it doesn't catch some of those nuances.
Well, with the foam box, we think we actually get some pressure back up onto the foot to create more of an arch. And so that might be what's actually giving us that better control without having to actually change the actual cast too much. When you take a completely non-weight bearing cast of somebody's foot, there's a lot of dressing that has to happen into a cast, where you take it, you've got to add plaster or remove plaster to be able to get what you're looking for, the sort of the desired effect at the end of the day. And so what I think we found was that this method, which is very common, can actually be quite effective.
How much? And I know you wrote a kind of a book on this too. You can get a foot, and certain shoes, like the ones that I use, certain shoes I can't wear them in because it's too thick, or the box in the toes is too shaped differently, and so it doesn't fit or whatever. Or like the back of the heel isn't tall enough, so whenever you put it in, you fall out, you come out of the shoe, and it's so stupid. How much does it matter? Like, are you wearing Nikes, Reeboks, Adidas? Is it this stuff, or dress shoes? How much does it matter based on the type of material that you make it out of?
Now, we had a little bit of a breakup there in the signal, so I wanted to make sure I got your question right. Do you mean, does it matter what kind of shoe we put an orthotic into?
Pretty much.
Oh, it matters greatly. And so, I kind of like to say that we can't out-orthotic a bad shoe. And so there's only so much that we can do with sort of suboptimal footwear for patients. And so a lot of what we do is spending time looking at the kind of footwear that would be appropriate for a patient's morphology, for how they move, for what their goals are. And then we really make sure that that's going to be matched up well to everything that they're looking at doing. And I've got to tell you, there's a lot of instances when we see patients who come through the door who don't need orthotics. What they need is footwear advice. They need to know how to buy the right kind of shoe. I'm asked every day on what's the best shoe that's out there.
Of course.
Because I also own a fairly large family shoe store and a running shoe store here in London, Ontario, on top of our medical practice. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory in our stuff, and we do a lot of footwear. And I'll tell you that there is no one best shoe. I can't say that New Balance is better than Saucony, which is better than ASICS, or any of that stuff. Above. Exactly. Yeah. I know Hoka makes a fantastic shoe. But, above a certain dollar threshold, so in that sort of $135 to $140 range and up, they're all great shoes from those manufacturers. The questions are, which one is going to be the best one for you? And that's so different in between people. I can take two people with the exact same foot, the exact same problem, the exact same way of walking, and they wind up with two completely different shoes that are comfortable to them.
Does that have to deal with body weight as well as male versus female versus are you a runner? Do you stand all day at a...
You add in how tight are your calves? Are you one of those people that walk around by slamming their heels into the ground? Are you like a loud walker, at the end of the day? All of those things come into play on what you're going to find comfortable. And then you can get into effect of, how many sensory receptors do you have per square inch of your skin that make you more sensitive to things like pressure and heat and vibration and all of that stuff. And, all of that really, really aids in how we perceive comfort. Because comfort's the biggest predictor of success with really any of this stuff, footwear, orthotics, all of it. And so, what's comfortable to one person is very uncomfortable to another.
Which is why some people can rock a thin shoe, a barefoot shoe, or one of those really thick New Balance walking on air type of soles, right?
That's it. So on that thing specifically, I kind of look at it two ways. Yes, one person's going to find that comfortable and one person isn't. But one of the avenues that we look to be able to predict whether someone's going to be able to do well with a really thin-soled shoe, more like a barefoot style of shoe, or a minimalist style of shoe, because those things are different, right? People often kind of use the term minimalist and barefoot interchangeable, and they're really not. No. So a barefoot shoe is just a foot covering, right? Something that's going to protect your skin against the ground, and that's it. Where a minimal shoe has a bit of that midsole that's built into it that does have some structure elements to it. And biomechanically, those two things are very different. It really has to do with how your body can deal with the demands of repetitive soft tissue loading. And some people just have the capability to be able to handle so much more than others. And it's figuring where you lie on that spectrum can make a big difference as to whether or not you do well with one or the other.
So in your opinion, it's not that barefoot or minimalist shoes are bad for people. It's just that some people are going to find those comfortable versus a big squishy shoe.
Exactly. It's figuring out what part, like where you lie on that spectrum and what that actually means for you. So there are some people that have, in my practice, that have tried, to go more minimalist in their running, who, despite doing everything right, they've consulted the best physios, they wore a transition shoe, they went into it really, really slowly, they still got injured. And there are other people in my practice who went, I'm going to give this a go, took everything out of their shoe. Orthotics went from a really cushioned 12 millimeter midsole shoe to running literally on their barefoot the next day and did fine with it. It's figuring out, again, where you lie on that spectrum. I love those kinds of minimalist shoes for certain, like really specific applications. I think they can have huge benefits to people. It's just a question of using them correctly.
So let's just dive in a little bit, because I know there's like heel cups and, like you said, the midsole thickness and everything. Mm-hmm. Someone who has like a flat foot, let's just use generic terms, a flat foot, and they have someone who has maybe like a plantar fasciitis. Are there certain things that as a chiropractor, physical therapist, podiatry, we can all sort of recommend these inserts and types of shoes? Is there something that we should be leaning towards for different conditions? Like you probably want something that has this style, and every shoe company has 3 styles of that kind of thing you're looking for?
Well, for somebody who has a really flat foot, so if we're taking that into consideration here, and you're saying, does someone have these kinds of styles? They do. And so there's 2 different things to look at. One is going to be the overall biomechanical control that shoe is going to offer. So, you might be familiar with the different categories of biomechanical control into cushioning, stability, and motion control. And a lot of people will say, hey, if you're a really flat foot, go into a motion control kind of shoe. Well, that's really good advice if you want to peg everybody to one hole kind of thing. On our end, what we're looking to do is to make sure that shoe fits their foot the best that it can first. So really what we want to do is look at the overall shape of it. And so if you take somebody who has a really straight, really flat, very wide foot, and you put them into something that's very narrow and very curved, which is what, a lot of cushioning shoes can look like sometimes, then that might not match up well with their foot. And it might not allow them to be able to walk the way they want to, and can cause some issues. So the very best thing to do is make sure that the shape of the shoe matches the shape of their foot, first of all. And then from there, from a biomechanics standpoint, if you think that they need cushioning, well, you look for that in a shoe that offers great cushioning. If you think that they need some biomechanical control, then certainly you can look for features that offer biomechanical control. But, going with the kind of panacea of saying this shoe is the only thing that this foot type can get into is just something we try to avoid, nowadays.
Even my wife, she likes to run and was pregnant, had a kid. Her feet, I guess, got a little bit bigger. And, when she would run, one of her toes would always go black. And she's like, what in the world? Yeah. These are new shoes. And then she finally just was like, you know what? I'm going to get a little bit bigger. I think there was a sale on a good pair of shoes, and she said, just a little bit bigger. Well, guess what? The only shoe that doesn't mess with her is the size that's 1/2 bigger. And so she's like, man, maybe that's what it was the whole time. And we were like, geesh.
Yeah, especially after pregnancy. I mean, up to a year later, when you look to the literature, women's foot shape can change up to sort of a half a size to a full size and a half is what the research will tell you. And so, it's usually worse with the first pregnancy, but can happen up to about your third pregnancy. You need to look at all your footwear. My wife, when she had our first, used to be an 8.5 in everything. Now she's a 9 to a 9.5, and we had to throw out, lots of shoes.
Lots of shoes. Is it just the ligaments stretching and not being able to come back like they used to?
Exactly. That relaxin hormone really likes the ligaments of your feet, and that combined with a little bit of weight gain and swelling, can reduce the height of your medial longitudinal arch and increase the length of your foot.
Yeah, I was about to ask you. So talking about pregnancy, I know that's one of the books that you're going to have coming out. What are you finding is the typical issues that they have, and is it easy to fix?
Well, once they have a permanent foot shape change, no, that really isn't easy to fix. It's just easy to deal with, after that point. The real question just becomes is from a function standpoint is, if they have all this new ligament laxity, what ends up happening with the muscles that are supposed to control those joints? Yeah. And so, that is where, you want to talk to good, chiros and physios and, kinesiologists and people that can really help to strengthen both their foot and the supporting musculature of the ankle. And even higher up into the hip, you have a little bit of hip dysfunction that's weak, and then all of a sudden your foot starts to move a bit more because of pregnancy, and one is just going to exacerbate the other one. And so our treatment approach has always been that I try to, stay away from always blaming one thing for the other, and oftentimes using both in concert, and that usually ends up giving us better outcomes.
Have you found that having a PhD and doing all the research that you've done has changed the offerings you have in your retail store?
Oh, very much so. Yeah.
You're just like, I don't even carry this, or this lower than this price, or this type of brand. I just don't even carry it because I know it's going to be detrimental to these kids.
I think where it's come out to is our thought process has changed and evolved with time. There's a slide that I stole from the very first class that I ever took in statistics. And that was a quote from Dr. Sidney Burwell from the Harvard Medical School. And it was that half of what you're going to be taught in 10 years will be proven to be wrong. The trouble is your professors don't know which half. And so, when I go back and look at what I was taught when I first went through all of this in terms of how we structure feet into different, types of footwear recommendations, that's definitely changed over time. And certainly, the buying habits have gone from, more structured, more stability kinds of things to more, let's get more breadth and more depth to fit someone's individual foot, with the proper width, with the proper length, with the proper style of shoe, and not just say, oh, you move a little bit, let's put you over in here and figure that out for them.
Do you happen to sell any shoes that are like $500 and like $5,000, like some of these YouTube videos?
No, we don't.
No,
I think our most expensive shoe that we sell is the ASICS Metaride on the athletic side. And it is a phenomenal carbon-based running shoe, like a carbon rocker running shoe.
Carbon-based.
Yeah. And the carbon forefoot rockers are a really big thing right now. And, for people who come in on the performance side and want a performance running shoe, it's fantastic. But as a clinician, man, some of these shoes that are coming out, their clinical use is just amazing. You take people who have first MTPOA or ankle osteoarthritis or midfoot osteoarthritis, who maybe don't want to get surgery or who can't get surgery or who've had poor results with other things. Man, can we change their function and their outcomes with some of these shoes. So we're using them not even near what they were intended for, but they have great outcomes with some patients.
What's some of the names that we should be looking for? That sounds pretty fancy, just to like go online and like, what do these shoes do?
So if you're looking at some of the carbon shoes that are out there right now, the ASICS Metaride is a phenomenal shoe. Saucony has one called the Endorphin Pro. I believe Hoka, their one's called the Carbon X. New Balance is one that's escaping right now. I think it's the Fuel Cell, but they've got a carbon shoe as well. And so, when it comes to footwear and the kind of footwear that we carry in our retail store, we always look at it with our pedorthic lens and with our clinician hat on to say, hey, if we're going to look at the particular characteristics this shoe offers, whether it's heel drop or the amount of rocker or the amount of toe spring or the level of cushioning or, the thickness and squishiness, which is called the durometer of the midsole, how do each one of these things actually relate to an individual person's pathology? And how would we then recommend one shoe over another based on that? And, and also based on the literature. And so that's always the lens that we look at stuff through.
That's cool. Well, that definitely changes what you're purchasing. That's for sure.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine having that much retail space and inventory where, hey, do you have to hire someone to manage all of that aspect of when to put things on sale and what to purchase because these colors suck?
Yeah. So what ended up happening was that we had a clinic business that started almost 20 years ago. And for a long time, it was just me and an assistant that ran the company. And then about 5 years ago, we decided we were going to expand. And one of the stores in London that has a 92-year history, like a generational store, we had been referring patients to buy their footwear for over 15 years. And a few years ago, once they started talking about retiring, I figured, someone's going to step in and take it up, because they did all the orthopedic stuff and all the hard to fit feet and the stuff that would make other places, kind of cringe and not be excited. They loved that stuff. And so it was always bang on in terms of their fit. They knew someone could walk in the door, they'd look at their feet and go, I know exactly what you need. And it was just one of those places. And so when no one stood up to buy them, I literally had 2 women in my office the same day crying. They were that distraught because they were so hard to fit. They couldn't buy shoes anywhere other than this store. So we decided, okay, we're going to step up. And so we entered into all of our negotiations and ended up taking over the store about a year later. Since then, we've also purchased a performance running shop as well. And so we've got that under our belt too. Yes, 100%. It takes a village to run something like that.
Are y'all doing okay?
Oh yeah, over the coronavirus stuff, had you talked to me the first 2 months, it was hairy like everybody else,
Yeah.
But we have I've been in business here for 20 years, and we have just a phenomenal support group of people. Our patient population is amazing, and they stepped up huge. They bought online, and we did a lot of porch deliveries. Even when the clinics were closed. And so it really helped get us through those really lean, really hard months. Because as you know, as a business owner, I mean, those non-deferrable expenses, if you're a footwear retail, 120 grand worth of shoes come in, you're paying for them 90 days later, no matter whether you're open or not.
Yeah. And you're like, hey, I just got some old shoes here because we haven't had any business. The size 9s are out. Where's the short feet?
Yeah, that's it. For sure. Yeah. You do some Facebook marketing.
Yeah. Oof. That's fantastic. I'm glad that you're making it. Okay, let's dive in. You've got some books. Give us, if you don't mind, a couple minute overview of each of them, and we'll just kind of go from there.
So the one that we put out in 2016 called the Plantar Fasciitis Plan, Free Your Feet from Morning Pain, was my attempt to help a greater swath of patients. I've been seeing people one-on-one for a number of years now, and just wanted to help more people than just being able to, to scale sort of the stuff that we tell people day in, day out. More than half of my day is spent seeing patients with plantar fasciitis. And so over that amount of time, we've treated thousands of cases of plantar fasciitis. And, what we've really noticed was that there seems to be lack of a good treatment algorithm when it comes to start with this and then move to that. You would be shocked how many people come to me and say, yeah, I've had plantar fasciitis for 5 months or 6 months or 9 months. And I say, great. What are the things that you've done? Well, the first thing I did was a cortisone shot.
Terrible.
Whoa. What do you mean the first thing you did was a cortisone shot? Did you take
It
care of any of the
hurts.
mechanical determinants, any of the risk factors, any of the things? No, that was the first thing I was given. Have you done any stretches, any exercises? No. So, we years ago put together this little pamphlet, this little handout that we would give people. It's like 15 pages. And I couldn't tell you how many people every day came back to me and said, man, that was awesome. I started the exercises. I feel better. Like the next morning, I felt better. And so we wrote the book with really that in mind, was to give people the opportunity to read this and say, here's the algorithmic approach that we give to all of our patients that come through the door. I don't believe in orthotics as a first line treatment for acute plantar fasciitis, unless you have significant risk factors, right? If you're diabetic and you're at risk for a foot ulcer, then yes, 100%, that's first line no matter what. Or if you have other chronic conditions, if you have rheumatoid arthritis or other types of foot osteoarthritis, then sure. But, if you're a, 35-year-old mom who decided that she was going to go back and do a little bit of running as a New Year's resolution, and all of a sudden, your heel starts to get sore when you wake up first thing in the morning, when you take those first 10 steps, there is a whole litany of things you can do before you go and try orthotics. And so that's what the plantar fasciitis plan is really about, is to give people the tools to be able to either use themselves to get better at home, or to know what to ask their specialist next. What was really nice about this book is that we consulted orthopedic surgeons, primary sports medicine doctors, physiotherapists, massage therapists to say, hey, what are the questions to ask? What are the things that you need to do? What are the things you need to be talking to your doctors about? And just to give people more information in terms of how to manage their own case better. And then the next book we have coming out in the next few weeks is called The Foot Strength Plan. And it's really all about how to keep your feet healthy and strong through ranges of motion and basic strengthening exercises. It also talks about the subtitle of that one is The Truth About Orthotics and More. There's lots of scary stuff on the internet these days saying how orthotics are collectively making the arches of the world weaker, and how that, when you walk in a shoe, or when you walk in an orthotic, you're walking in a cast that doesn't let the foot bones move. And why would you ever want to walk in a cast? It's just so ridiculous, when it comes to some of this stuff.
Maybe 20 years ago, before the technologies changed, I feel like
it's not even
material
that.
these days.
Yeah, and just people's mindsets. We've gone from, I find that the age that we live in digitally has taken us from practitioners that value a more holistic, medium approach to everything, to more of a clickbaity, dualistic, this is good and that's bad, and I'm right and you're wrong, and this is the only thing you should do, this is the thing you should never do. And I run away from that stuff screaming, just because people are individual, and what works for somebody is not going to work for somebody else. And just because you did good with barefoot running doesn't mean that your uncle, your aunt, or your brother, or anybody else should try that, because they might get really hurt.
This sounds like a really interesting book, because so much of stuff that we do can be related from the hips to the foot, from the foot back to the hip or the back. So to kind of have a plan, what to look for, like a flow chart. But anyway, one of those that you can take your book, kind of flow chart it, and then kind of put into, okay, you need stretching. Well, these are the stretches that I like, or I've seen the help in the past. And then you just have like a nice repeatable procedure when your patients come in. I like that.
Yeah. And then the other books, they're all at various stages of production right now. So we won't chat about those ones too much just yet, because, I don't know when they're coming out, but they're all slated to come out this year. Other than my children's book, which is all about how to say thank you and why saying thank you is awesome.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah. I have a 3 and a 7-year-old, and started about a year ago when one of them, just had a bit of an issue with gratitude. And so I said, I'm going to write something fun. It's coming out through Friesen Press in probably two months. So.
What kind of animal, or the subject?
No. And so the title is called A Special Thank You. So it's just all about saying thank you. And when you go through the illustrations, it's actually my family. And so I found this beautiful children's book illustrator that I just fell in love with his work. And I gave him pictures of my family and just things that are really relevant to us. And so, like, we have this restaurant that we go to, so they use their logo. And I'm a huge watch collector, actually a hobby watch maker. And so I've got watches and different, things. And it was, their Montessori classroom, and just all of that stuff is all throughout this book. So I wanted to write something that they'd be able to take for the rest of their lives and remember that their dad did something for them.
Wow. Okay. Part-time watchmaker. What does that look like?
Oh man. So
I mean, are you Rolex on the side over here?
yeah, you know it. And so I've been a watch collector for the better part of 15 years, from new to vintage, a lot of vintage. And so about 5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to learn more about the inner workings. And like anything you can learn online these days, I bought a kit and started learning, broke a lot of stuff. Have started going through watchmaking school now. And yeah. And so my 40th birthday, I actually made myself a pocket watch movement wristwatch. That's just a lot of fun. I make them for friends and family on, big events and things like that. And it's my form of meditation, because when you're trying to place something that's a half a millimeter on something else, it needs a pretty steady hand and a lot of concentration. So
I know a guy that does pin, an ink pen, like a ballpoint pen, and it's amazing what the guy can come up with. I don't know if that's probably a lot easier, casting something into a pin shape versus building a watch, but that's pretty wild because you can use so many different kind of materials, and there's a reason why some of these cost $10,000 versus $59. So
100%. Yep. And even on the mechanical movement side, some of the stuff that's made in Switzerland versus some of the stuff that you see in other areas that are a bit more mass produced. I mean, the quality is just so different.
Oh, wow. So they really
But like with everything these days too, it's like that.
All right, so we'll switch a little bit. That was fun, more around my curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're marketing, you can discuss it with the orthotics, with the Soul Science, or with the shoe company. But what are you doing? What's your best bang for your buck these days?
Social proof. And that's it. There's so many different ways that we can look at our marketing. And we've tried it all, from really traditional radio and, newspaper type of things to Facebook and Google ads and, all of that stuff. And it's really nice to be able to quantify what's happening on the Facebook side and Google side when you know who's booked in where from those clicks. But the thing that's moved the needle for us is social proof marketing. And so it's, asking for a review. You can spend your time as much as you want to telling other people about how great you are. But if their friend or their cousin or, someone that they know, trust, and respect says, I went here and they fixed me and they're awesome, well, that's worth so much more. And so we've spent a lot of time building out that part of it.
Do you use the written in videos and all of that in for Google ads and Facebook?
We use a little bit of all of it within the confines of our own code of ethics when it comes to marketing. So there are some things on the review side that we just can't do. And so we do as much as we can within the boundaries of what our college says is okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. There's always some kind of board out there.
That's it. We're able to do a little bit more with the retail, but when it comes to the pedorthic side, the services side, we do have to watch what we're saying.
Yeah, Australia's like that too. They're pretty intense with their regulations on web pages. So you're married, you have kids. In the interview, we always like to end it with some fun questions about that. So if you don't mind, how in the world are you able to take more time off and keep your love alive with your family?
I have an amazing team that allows me to do whatever I need to and not worry about it. That's it. We take care of them like they're gold. That is it. Without my team, I would not be able to do anything. I wouldn't even be able to book this podcast. And so it all comes down to team. It all comes down to the people who we have here that support one another to the end goal.
What were you looking for when you hired them? Is there some certain characteristics that you definitely are like, hey, I need to have this and this, whether it's for a certain role or anything?
We hire for fit and then we train for skill. If you're not a culture fit, you don't work here. If you don't have the skill, but you're a culture fit, we'll train you. That's really the main thing we look for when we're going for that. And somebody who has an ethical outlook on provision of care. There are way too many people that don't take that ethical road, especially early in your career. It's easy to, let your ethics and your morals bend a little bit and, to be able to get a sale when you're hungry. And, people who stick by what they believe in, always, those are the ones that we hire.
Do you have an example of one that didn't do that and it backfired?
We do. I've been bitten a couple of times before, but there's no need to dwell on that kind of stuff. And so,
Okay. All right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not 100% every time, but when you figure it out, you're like, all right, we got to make some changes.
Well, and it was because we've been bitten once or twice in the past that, we started making some really hard rules on, who's going to work here. Because at the end of the day, it just takes one bad hire to spoil, what could take a decade to build a culture. And so we will always hire for culture fit first and train the skill.
Did you happen to take any kind of business classes or training programs that are out there?
I did. I had a business education in two different ways. One was the School of Hard Knocks. My dad was the one of the executives at Radio Shack in Canada while I was growing up. And so I spent a good swath of my childhood going into work with him and talking with him and listening to him on conference calls. And, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from his guidance. And he ended up working with me before he passed. And those were some of the best years. Some of the best years of my professional life, which was great. Actually, my whole family works with me. My brother, my mom, and that's been great. And then I did a program called Sporting Goods Business at Sir Sandford Fleming College here in Ontario, which is really focused. If you want to be a rep in the sporting goods business, then that business program was really geared towards that specifically. So I did that. But then ended up dropping out 2 months before I was going to graduate to come to Western University here to do what I do now.
Okay.
And, didn't look back. So I didn't actually finish that degree.
No, that's okay, though, at this point, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. 10 years and a PhD later.
Exactly.
Certainly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so what are some web pages that we need to check out for you?
If you want to check out the business page, it's soulscience.ca. And so that's where a lot of patients will go to learn about what we do and more about orthotics and some of the conditions and how we can help them. And then for the book stuff and some of the other things, there's a website we're just about to launch called stuffaboutfeet.com. On there, you can get all of my books. You can listen to prior podcasts that we've been on. You can see we have a free course on some basics of foot strengthening. You're going to see a lot more come out of that site in the next year.
And it's Soul, S-O-L-E.
S-O-L-E.
Not like soul music.
Yeah. The last time we were at a big event, we had somebody who maybe had one too many drinks and asked if we were a church group. And I said, nope, no, we're not. And so it's all about feet. So
you should learn how to spell. You've got this experience through retail, through science, and providing lots of help for patients and things. Mm-hmm. On a business side, what do you find maybe for like a young doctor or someone maybe in the middle of their career where they're kind of getting burned out? Maybe they have a lot of high student loans. What's something that we can do, I guess, to persevere, to make it, to become a better leader? Just advice that you wish you knew maybe like 10 years ago that you would, give your kids when they're 22.
On that end is getting really clear on your why. Getting really clear on why it is that you do what you do every day. And I think some of that stuff we can get lost in, right? I mean, we all started being in healthcare at some point because we wanted to make people's lives better. Then, especially if you're a solo practitioner running everything where you're, from soup to nuts doing all of it, sometimes you can lose a bit of that passion and forget why you're in doing what you're doing. So reconnecting with some of your patients on how you make a difference in their day-to-day lives, I find can sometimes be the re-energizing that you need to be able to get back to being excited about your practice again. Because at the end of the day, a lot of us want to, chase things like growth, and we want our practices to be bigger, and we want them to be, have more locations and all of this stuff. And that really isn't necessarily the goal. At the end of the day, it's, if you make outcomes the primary thing that, you focus on, and that what gets you excited to get up and do what you do, then growth will come naturally.
It's two different questions, but they might blend for you when I ask them. Mm-hmm. One would be some of the best metrics to track in a business, maybe a doctor's office, or maybe we have a side hustle like with supplements or, shoe mm-hmm. stores. And then also how to know when to fire somebody. So that's why I said they might be interrelated.
Sure. So, first of all, I mean, the first KPI on the firing side is culture fit, right? At the first signs of culture fit or a mismatch, that's when that person goes. No questions asked, there, because you can't let that pervasively change the culture of your business. And so we all know that one person that maybe we're holding on for and we're hoping that they're going to change. At the end of the day, having those crucial conversations and protecting what you've built over the last little while, I think, is paramount. In terms of KPIs, every business is so unique, when it comes to the things that they track and the metrics that they want to look at. If I was to offer any suggestions, it's going to be look at leading metrics, not trailing ones. So what are the things that you're going to see today that's going to predict how your business health 2 weeks from now, not the things that you're measuring today from 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Because at that point, it's too late. It's too late. It's too late to say something's not working, or it's too late to say I need to turn this knob over here a little bit more to be able to do it. And it could be that if you're in a new practice that doesn't have enough patients, it could be simply how many leads came in and what were the conversion on those leads. And if you're not doing well enough in your marketing, how do you change it? It could be that if you're a huge practice that, is booked with a 2-week waiting list, the question becomes then is what do your conversions look like at that point? And are you seeing more people but making less money? Which is very, very common when businesses get larger. This is really interesting phenomenon where, you've got more patients booked in your schedule, but, you're less profitable than you were before. And so it's making sure that the people who do end up making it through the gatekeepers are actually appropriate referrals.
Because it's funny how much more you actually have to make to recoup the cost of the next assistant or the next doctor that you have to hire. It's not 20 more people usually. It's a substantial amount more to make it really profitable.
Which is why finding your point of scale makes sense. Because let's say you run a $500,000 practice and you make $100,000 at the end of the year. Automatically, we think if we have $1 million practice, we'll have $200,000 at the end of the year. And sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes you double in size and you have less retained earnings. And that next profitability point might not come to 1.2 or 1.4 or $2 million.
And do you want to work that hard?
Exactly. My friend Jason Gaynard, who has a podcast called Community Made, has an episode that's called Scaling is Stupid. And it's one of my favorite episodes to go back. And when I think that, my ego is making me think that my business needs to be bigger for the face value of saying that I have a practice with 15 locations and 20 specialists. If that's getting out of check, I always go back and give a listen because there's some great words of wisdom in there.
Real quick, because you made a comment several times, how do you know, or is there any wrong way to define your cultural fit? Like, does that mean you can have I want a happy, we make jokes type of practice? Some people are super serious when you walk in. You're like, whoa, what's going on? Is that the culture we're talking about, or is there certain other things?
Yes, that's it. So if you have a super serious culture, you don't hire the jovial, wants to chat and get in everyone's face kind of person. If you have a super happy type of culture, you don't want to hire someone who's going to look down on, that kind of stuff. It's really figuring out the business that you want to build and the culture that you want to build and the day-to-day interactions that you want those people to have with your customers and your patients. Find the ones that it's their life's goal to do that, because there's so many of us, that are out there that are motivated, in different ways, and it's just finding the right ones. And I believe it. It might come to me as I'm talking about it, but a friend of mine has a great hiring practice, and they put out a job post and say, if you want a job here, send us a video and just say how many, explain to me why you'd be a great fit for here. And whenever you put up a job post, you'll get a ton of resumes, that are there, and people who don't even read what the requirements are. And of the people who send you the videos, you can watch and see what kind of demeanor and how they put themselves out there and how they put themselves forward. And it's those people that you like of the videos that then you'll read their resumes and see whether or not you want to bring them in. And we've certainly used that before in our hiring.
I applied for a job, I think in the Cayman Islands or I don't know, someplace random like that. And that's what they wanted. They wanted a video, and they didn't really give you very much to go on. So put some video, I put some pictures in there, I did a voiceover, I did all these different things. I threw my podcast in there. I was like, I got to call back. Ended up not working out, which was good because then a hurricane like destroyed the entire island.
Oof.
And
Oh,
so
man.
I'm glad, things work out sometimes. So I don't know whatever happened to that clinic. But anyway, before we go, you've already mentioned some podcasts. Any books that you think that we should definitely check out before you go?
The one book that I've reread time and time again because I enjoy the story is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. It's one of my favorite books. And the audiobook narration is just brilliant. It's really, really well done. So, it's the whole story of how from Nike's beginning as Blue Ribbon Sports all the way to lessons in that book. And so, from a memoir perspective, there's that one. But from a business perspective, Ryan Holiday's Perennial Seller, phenomenal book. Yeah, about how to build a product that will stand the test of time, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and how to do that specifically. Whether you're an author or whether you're, making someone an orthotic and building a business that will stand the test of time, it's a great book to change your mindset.
I've got an Amazon page with all the book recommendations from everyone, and they've definitely hit it a couple of times. So yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one. Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Colin Dombroski, I really appreciate your time and going into the expertise that you have for our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Another great interview has ended. While you're on your phone, click that review button. Write up a nice review for me. 5 stars if you could. As everyone says in the industry, it'll help other people to find us when we have enough rankings. Not to mention, I'll mention you and your review on an upcoming episode. If you follow me at all on Instagram, you only get one link. So I use a Linktree. And so it's a doctorsperspective.net/links with an S. And that's going to give you everything you need to know. The top episodes of 2017 and 2018, the podiatry series, dentist, acupuncture series, holiday 2017, financial series, how to write a review, how to support the show like buying a cup of coffee, getting swag like t-shirts, the Today's Choices Tomorrow's Health book, that's the blueprints for better health, exercise, picking food correctly, and financial. And then, of course, bundle packs, which can get you the No Needle Acupuncture book for 40 common conditions, including the electric acupuncture pin at a great deal. The resources page has some of the products that I like. It's affiliate style, so if you buy something from them, I get a piece of that. Just like on the show notes pages, if you buy a book from clicking that link, I get a small piece of that as well. So I really appreciate that. Things like Screencast-O-Matic, Pure VPN, Missing Letter, JLab speakers, ProLone, Edge, or Hawk grips. Once again, if you do need any coaching on how to improve some of your blood work, drop weight, and the ProLone diet, fast mimicking diet 5-day plan, let me know. As well as if you just need some coaching, whether it's health, whether it's marketing, whether you need some practice growth, etc. Reach out. Facebook, Justin Trosclair, MCC. Of course, out of doctorsperspective.net on the top right, you got all the social media icons that you can imagine. Click your favorite and reach out. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please tell a friend, pass it along. You can go to .net/listen. It's just that easy. It'll open up right in your app. And don't forget, I appreciate you. Listen, critically think, and integrate. See you on the mini-sodes on Thursdays and Saturdays. Hope you're enjoying those. I'm definitely having fun summarizing these podcasts in less than 10 minutes for you. You get the nuggets without having to waste your time. Have a great week.
A doctor's perspective. Learn stories of success. Avoid struggles they've met. When doctors of all kinds come together to help you shine. So sit back, take it in, and integrate what you